All right. Sorry, friends. Okay. Language instruction in your classroom. So moving from basic assessments of these kiddos in tier 1 and tier 2 to instruction. And these are really the same things. These are good for all kids in your classroom, regardless if a regular education teacher has a concern about their language or not, or you yourself as a special education teacher. Obviously, they have some kind of disability to merit time spent with you and have IEP goals in it. But regardless of language, I guess, has been identified as a specific disability or not, these are just good suggestions. We want our physical setting to promote talk, which is probably counterintuitive to our thinking because we don't want disruptive talk, but we want to make sure it's social because you're going to learn so many key skills through those social interactions in their language. So we have to promote talk in a physical setting with boundaries. The teacher must provide opportunities for children to interact and use language they're learning. The teacher needs to provide opportunities for children to use language for a variety of purposes and with a variety of audiences, meaning it needs to go beyond your classroom. So how are you going to set up opportunities for them at recess or an art class or the lunchroom? And the teacher needs to respond to student talk in ways that encourage continued talk. So you want them to have the opportunity to practice with you as well. If we look at specific to early childhood, what could that look like? These are the pretty typical things for good reasons. Circle time, or story related group activities. I think about when you go to like story time at the library, they read a story, but then they also do a little, song about the same thing. And maybe they do a game about the same thing and the coloring sheets about the same thing. Literacy rich centers, how can it be incorporated into snack time? That's a good time to practice communication, snack and lunchtime. When I worked in the program with, it was called the Communication Interaction Disorders Program, but it was kind of like their autism program in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I had a lot of kids in that program on my caseload, and I chose about midway through the first semester, I just started eating lunch in there every day. First of all, they were a riot, but second of all, I realized it was such valuable time to get with this handful of kids that were all on my caseload to practice these social skills in this language they so desperately needed. So snack time and lunchtime are just huge opportunities. Gross and motor play outside, and then closing circle time. So again, circle time. The things on the right are not so novel. Again, they're not so mind-boggling. To use interesting materials, to give them choices. I think the thing I want to make the most of here is this idea of sabotaging their speech. So kind of that second and third bullet point about putting items out of reach or giving them an inadequate portion. And then those bottom two, using sabotage, using silly situations. This would be a way to elicit language. So, for instance, if you know something is of high value to them, is highly reinforcing, put it beyond their reach so they have to request it because that will help them practice initiating and getting it. Now, if you have a child that's not working on that, I would not suggest it. If you don't have concerns about language, I wouldn't drive yourself crazy putting stuff out of their reach. But those kids that you're working on getting them to initiate and speak, definitely put things where out of reach to where it's just natural for them to have to talk to you to get it. Same thing with an inadequate portion. And this is when it's kind of silly. I do this with my own children. Especially if something's very reinforcing to them. So let's say ice cream. They're so excited, and I get out an ice cream cone, and then I put the tiniest little, scoop of ice cream on the cone and hand it to them to where they go, "Hey, Mom, wait, I want more ice cream," because that's an inadequate portion that's unexpected or it's silly. And it's kind of like sabotage, and you might do this already. This is a really big way that I encourage language in kids and adults too, is by purposely missing it, by purposely messing up, holding up that red truck and saying, "Oh, I love your big blue truck." So the kid goes, "That's not blue, it's red." Um, all those things, and you will get to know each student and to what degree they can handle and understand that kind of sabotaging and purposely kind of making life harder for them. Most kids are oblivious, and it just really helps them initiate, and once they kind of learn the value and the power they have with their communication, again, it snowballs from there. In elementary school, we use slow paced and non-redundant. We try to instruction. And then we're really working more on vocabulary and grammar. So, unless it's a severely disabled child, they're moving out of needing to learn to talk and, initiate. And it's more working on building their vocabulary and their grammar. So not only can they speak, but they can understand what they're reading and hearing. And then, for some kids in elementary, they really are still working on those phonological skills, trying to just get those basic blocks together for reading in their language. When we move into secondary, hopefully, again, this would be considering, again, those less intense kids. It would be, um, let's see, how do I say it again? Kids who need less support. So these are the kids that might just have resource minutes or something. By the time they're in secondary, they're not the kids in the life skills class. But a big strategy to use is these mnemonic strategies. These, like for instance, how they made the acronym DISSECT mean something, but trying to basically give them all these kind of memory hooks. And so, really, regardless if you have been diagnosed with a disability, I can remember lots of different strategies like this I was taught in high school. When I was in sophomore English, I had a teacher that used them a lot. And when I was a junior in high school, I think it was history, I had a teacher that used them a lot. So these are good for everyone. There's a lot of research behind them, regardless if a child is disabled or not. So this is just one example, trying to teach them way to, I think, learn a word. Yeah. All right. And then remember, I said we move toward looking at instruction for students now with more significant disabilities, or we would say that higher support. They would be in need of higher support.